Hello, 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 and welcome back to the channel. I'm the Kick Sixer, and if this is your first time on the channel, welcome. This is honestly one of the main reasons I made the channel for stuff like this. Um, and this is the college alumni tournament in Madden 23. We're taking alumni from all different colleges, 16 of them. This is a 16-team tournament, and yeah, we're gonna run a simulation tournament in Madden and see who comes out on top. See who has the best college alumni. And yeah, it should be really fun to do and kind of watch along the way. And in this video, we're going to be looking at all the teams that made the tournament. As you'll see here in a second, I have a pool of 40, but obviously not everybody can make the cut, and I'll go into some of them why they didn't make the cut. But yeah, I selected all of them based on a bunch of different criteria. I might get into some of that along the way. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right, so we have the bracket right here, and I mean, let's go ahead and jump into it. The first team making the bracket, making the college alumni tournament, is going to be Alabama. You know, surprise, surprise. Now, I mean, we'll get into some of the strengths and weaknesses of Alabama here in a second, but I mean, this is going to be a team. Obviously, just to kind of explain some of the alumni teams, like Alabama's going to have like guys like Tua, Derrick Henry. But yeah, I'll go ahead and explain that here in a second. So yeah, Alabama coming in at 88 overall, 87 offense, 91 defense. This is going to be a team that has Tua at quarterback, Derrick Henry at running back. Strengths, another strength is receiver. Pretty much offensive skill positions in general. Receivers going to have like guys like Amari Cooper. I think I can get Calvin Ridley back. You know, he's suspended in real life, but he'll be on the team. Um, Jalen Waddle will be on the team. Tight ends is a little questionable. Nothing really special. They got O.J. Howard and Irv Smith, so like a 75 and a 70 tight end. Offensive line's nothing special. Now we look at the defense. 91 overall defense. Really solid defensive line. They're going to have guys like Jonathan Allen, Quinnen Williams, Deron Payne along the defensive line. Linebackers are going to be solid as well. Guys like C.J. Mosley, Dante Hightower. Now the secondary is probably the strongest thing on the defense. It's between that or the defensive line. They're going to have guys like Eddie Jackson, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Marlon Humphrey, Diggs, Surtain. And yeah, really strong secondary. If you have to be nitpicky about this team, weaknesses are their offensive line's average and their pass rush. They don't really have any elite pass rushers. Most of their defensive linemen are going to be interior guys. But again, this is really a really solid team. Not really any holes at all. So let's go ahead and get back to the bracket, see who else is going to make the tournament. So coming in at number 2, we are going to have Ohio State. All right, this is going to be another really solid team, another really well-balanced team with not a lot of holes. So we can see right here, wide receiver is going to be a strength. This is going to be a team that's led by Justin Fields. Jumped the gun a little bit right there, but 86 overall, 85 offense, 88 defense. Yeah, wide receiver is going to be a strength. They're going to have guys like Michael Thomas, McLaurin, Curtis Samuel as well. And running back, they're going to have Ezekiel Elliott. Tight ends, they have a couple of guys in the 60s. Nothing special at tight end. Be nitpicky again. Offensive line's average, nothing special when you compare it to the rest of the team. Now defense, 88 overall. Their pass rush is going to be really strong. They're going to have both Bosa brothers. They're going to have Chase Young, and they're going to have Hayward on the inside, who also should generate some pass rush. Now, linebackers are average, nothing special. Secondary is really solid. They have a couple really good safeties, a couple really good corners as well. Guys like Ward and Lattimore at cornerback. So another really strong team, easily number 2, and we'll get to some of these others in a second. It's really top heavy in this tournament, and we'll see how that pans out along the way. Coming in at number 3, we are going to have LSU. Okay? Now, we look at LSU. We remember the 2019 team with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. All those guys made the league, and they're all thriving in the league, and that's going to show up in this tournament. Uh, Passing game should be a major strength for this team with receivers and quarterback being Joe Burrow. We look at their overall 84s across the board. Yeah, just a really solid team. Running backs will be like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He won't be the starter though. That'll be Leonard Fournette. But tight end is also going to be nothing special, I believe. Rose like a 74. But the offensive line's decent except for left tackle. That will be a problem. We'll see how that plays out in the tournament, depending on who they play. That could be an issue. I believe he's like a mid 60. But the defense, really strong secondary. Guys like Tre'Davious White, Tyrann Mathieu, Jamal Adams, really strong in the secondary. Linebackers are going to be really speedy, bouncing around everywhere. It's going to be Patrick Queen, Deion Jones, and Devin White. Defensive line is also decent. You're going to have a guy like Danielle Hunter down there. And yeah, just a really well-balanced team. Not a lot of holes outside of left tackle. And yeah, another really well-balanced team. Should be a real threat in the tournament as well. Now back to the bracket for the 4 seed. And this 4 seed is an interesting one. It's going to be Oklahoma. Now, why is Oklahoma interesting? If you haven't seen it already, 80 overall, and that's because they have a 91 offense and a 68 defense, which I've already looked. A 91 offense is the highest in the tournament, and a 68 defense is the lowest in the tournament. Now, in the future, if I do future tournaments, hopefully Oklahoma has some better defensive talent. I know they got Venables now as head coach. He's a defense-minded guy. He was at Clemson before. Maybe they can put some guys in the league, but right now, you can see strengths and weaknesses. It's pretty straightforward. Strengths, offense, weaknesses, defense. No one below a 78 on the offense, and I believe that is a left guard who's a 78, and I don't think anybody else is below a 80. This is going to be a team that's led by Jalen Hurts. At quarterback, I believe he's a higher overall than Kyler Murray when I made these rosters. Running backs, Joe Mixon. Receivers, going to be CeeDee Lamb, Marquise Brown. Tight end is going to be Mark Andrews. You also have a really solid offensive line with guys like Trent Williams and Lane Johnson at tackle. Yeah, just a really solid team on offense. They got a Pro Bowl offense over there at Oklahoma. But on the defensive side, nobody is above a 75. And there's really only like 3-4 players in the 70s. It's a really weak team. They do have enough people to fill spots, but yeah, it's going to be a struggle bus on the defensive side, and they should be involved in a lot of high-scoring games in this tournament. Unless that defense costs them, we'll have to wait and see. Now back to the bracket for the 5 seed. The 5 seed is going to be none other than Georgia, which I was surprised they came in at 5. I expected them to obviously make the tournament, but being at 5 came as a little bit of surprise. And we'll see what they got cooking over at Georgia. Now, this is a team that's coming in at a 78 overall, 79 offense, 77 defense. Strength of this team should be the running game. They got Nick Chubb at running back, a really strong offensive line. Now, the passing game is not going to be anything special. A couple guys mid-60s tight end wise, that's one of their major weaknesses. But a bunch of high 70s. I believe they have an 80 receiver as well. And they'll be getting the ball from Matthew Stafford, who's a solid quarterback in this tournament. I don't think he's anything special. But yeah, a solid overall offense. 79. That's definitely nothing that's no slouch. Now on the defensive side, they're going to have a bunch of edge rushers. That should be a major strength. They'll be running a 3-4 defense. I pick the defenses based on each team's personnel. Georgia will be one of those 3-4s. just because they have a lot of edge rushers. And at middle linebacker, they're going to be strong there too. A guy like Roquan Smith will be at linebacker. And the secondary is also really solid. They got many like high 70 guys, high mid 70 guys. No really major holes anywhere other than tight end. All right, so back to the bracket. Who's going to come in at 6? Iowa, which might come as a bit of a surprise, but we'll get to some of those strengths and weaknesses for Iowa here. And as you can see, major strength is offensive line, one of the best in the tournament. That's probably what carries that 79 offensive rating, 77 overall, 76 defense. But yeah, offensive line is going to be a real strength. So is the tight end passing options. You notice I put passing options. That's because Kittle is going to be a tight end, and I moved Hawkinson and Noah Fant to wide receiver to kind of give them more options in the passing game. Um, that should really help in the run game too. I mean, blocking on the outside with tight ends. But those are really the best three receiving threats on the team, so I moved a couple of them over to receiver. Quarterback and running back on offense, and other receivers for that matter, are going to be pretty low, either in the 50s or 60s overall. So we'll kind of see how this team plays out. Um, if the running back has uh, a brain at all, he should be able to run behind this offensive line. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see. Now on the defensive side, they're going to have Micah Hyde, who's like a 91 or so free safety. That's really strong. Defensive line's a little questionable. High 60s, low 70s guys. Linebackers are decent. They're going to have a bunch of middle of the road, like mid 70s linebackers, and they do have a couple of decent corners. So this should be a strong team. Honestly, surprised they came in at 6, but I think they do deserve it. The way this team is built. Now back to the bracket. This time, number 7 seed, we are going to have Clemson, which honestly I'm surprised they fell this far, all the way to 7, but I mean, we'll see why here in a second. And you'll notice 67, or not 67, 76 overall, 73 offense, 81 defense. Now, the reason that offense is so low, I mean, you think of Clemson, they got the receivers. They got guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Williams, a bunch of other guys. Running back's going to be Travis Etienne. He's good. Quarterback's going to be Deshaun Watson, I believe. I think he got it over Trevor Lawrence. All solid, all solid guys I just named. But the offensive line is nowhere to be found for Clemson. They got like 3 guys in the game. The rest are filled. If you don't have a spot filled, you get auto assigned a bottom guy in the league, which would be like a mid low 50. So this offensive line is abysmal, to be honest, and we'll see how that affects them. Um, but defensively, I mean, you look at the defensive line, you see it right there. This is a really heavy defensive line. No edge rush, but in the run game, they should be clogging up every hole possible. Average weight along the defensive line is 332 pounds. That's because they got guys like Grady Jarrett on defensive end in a 4-3 defense. All right, and yeah, just a really heavy but solid defensive line, all like high 80s. Now, also, linebackers is a bit questionable, and I have outside linebackers as a weakness here. That's because Isaiah Simmons, he's a safety in Madden. He's moving to middle linebacker for this, just to give him a solid linebacker. They do have a bunch of linebackers, but they're all like low or mid high 60s. But secondary will be solid. A couple decent safeties. Corners, you're going to have A.J. Terrell and Mullins. Another weakness for this Clemson team is going to be at kicker, because they don't have one in the game. If you don't have a kicker or punter in the game, I'm going to make kickers for those teams. And like say the lowest kicker that team actually has is a 65, I'm going to auto assign the teams that don't have a kicker like a 60 overall. So that's going to be something to watch out for in the tournament, because I think they're going to have a guy coming in next year, Mr. Potter. But yeah, Clemson doesn't have anybody this year. We'll see how that affects them as well. Now, coming in at the 8th seed, we're about to start getting into some of these matchups. But first, we have the 8th seed, and that is going to be Notre Dame. All right, so let's go ahead and start looking at what Notre Dame has going for them. See, 76 overall, 80 offense, 73 defense. Strengths, offensive line is a major strength for this team. That's honestly, the main reason they are in the 80 overall. The best two guards in the game. Oklahoma had the best two tackles. Notre Dame has the best two guards between Nelson and Martin. A couple really good tackles too with Stanley. Um, Wide receivers are going to be solid. Tight ends solid with Komet. But quarterback and running back are going to be some major question marks for Notre Dame. Um, Ian Book is going to be the quarterback. He's in the 50 overalls. And yeah, we'll just have to see how the offense plays out. Offensive line should give him plenty of time. It's just going to be up to quarterback and running back to make the plays. Defensively, nothing really special. They do have Harrison Smith at strong safety, as you can see right there under strengths. Defensive line's a bit of a weakness. Um, yeah, just nothing special. Low 70s, high 60s along the defensive line. Uh, Linebackers are going to be a bunch of low, mid 70s as well. So yeah, nothing really special defensively for Notre Dame. The offensive line is really going to have to carry this team, in my opinion. So we'll see how that helps them. We'll see how it goes for Notre Dame. Now, who will Notre Dame be playing in the first round? This is going to be the 9 seed, and that's going to be Michigan. And we all know one guy that's going to be on Michigan. We'll go ahead and look at some of their strengths and weaknesses as well. But that main guy being Tom Brady at quarterback. But yeah, they're going to come in at a 67 overall, 67 offense, 77 defense. And yeah, Tom Brady's going to be the quarterback. He's going to have Donovan Peoples-Jones to throw it to at wide receiver. But outside of that, they don't really have much else on offense. Running back and receiving options are weaknesses of this team. They have Peoples-Jones, who's going to be like a 79. But yeah, not many weapons for Brady to throw to. Offensive line's going to be decent. They have a really solid offensive line. I believe they have a couple high mid 80s and a few other 70s guys. Um, yeah, really solid offensive line. Defensively, they do have a good pass rush. They're going to have Rashawn Gary. Um, they're going to be another one of those 3-4 teams due to a bunch of pass rushers like Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah, inside linebackers are going to have Devin Bush. Secondary, nothing super special. They do have more safeties than they do cornerbacks, so I believe some of those safeties move down. Um, but yeah, another really solid team. No major holes outside of those offensive weapons. But kicker is also going to be another one of those problems for Michigan. Another one of those teams that doesn't have a kicker or punter in the game, so they will be auto-assigned one. We'll see how that affects them as well. Now, the second matchup being announced will be between the 7 and 10 seed. Clemson's the 7th seed. The 10th seed is going to be Penn State. All right. There's a few really good people that went to Penn State. Let's go ahead and look at some of those strengths and weaknesses of Penn State. You can see here, pretty balanced. 75 overall, 75 offense, 76 defense. Strengths, weapons, offensive weapons they're really solid for this team. They're going to have Saquon Barkley at running back. They're going to have Godwin at receiver, Gesicki at tight end. There are some holes along the offensive line. A couple solid pieces there, though. Quarterback is going to be a major question mark. Trace McSorley is going to be the quarterback for this team. He's the only Penn State quarterback in the game. He's in the 50 overalls. So, I mean, he'll have the weapons. Offensive line is going to be questionable, but we'll see if he can make plays. Now, defensively, Not much there. They do have a couple really solid players like Adrian Amos, and you'll see one of them listed under strengths all by himself, Micah Parsons. Um, he was enough to like say they have a really strong pass rush or really strong linebackers because he's one man and he doesn't do just one thing. He's a man of many tricks, and he's gonna have to do that for this Penn State defense because I mean, it's a solid defense, but inside linebackers are gonna be a hole. He's gonna have to be everywhere. He's gonna have to do a lot for this defense. I mean, which shouldn't be a problem for him. He's one of the best players in the game. Um, really good off the edge, really good in space. He should be, yeah, one of the best players for this Penn State defense. Let's get back to the bracket and look at some of these other teams making the tournament. Next up is the 11 seed who will be taking on Iowa in the first round, and that is going to be Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is a really interesting team. They've had some overall changes in the last year. We'll get to some of those here in a second. So, yeah, you see their overall 75, offense 79, defense 72. Um, Russell Wilson is the quarterback for this team. He took a major overall dip. He was the main guy I was referring to. But I think he's like a mid 70 now, so still solid, all things considered in this tournament. But the running game should be really strong for Wisconsin. They're going to have Jonathan Taylor at running back, really solid offensive line. Another one of those teams that produces good offensive lines. Um, Offensive weapons, passing wise, is going to be questionable. They don't really have much of anything. They have a couple low 70s receivers. Uh, they do have some running backs might be able to move over. Think they have a tight end around 70 as well. So yeah, nothing really special passing wise. Russell Wilson, he's gonna have, yeah, Russ is gonna have to cook, and he don't really got many ingredients. So it's gonna be interesting to see on offense, even though they are still a 79 overall. But defensively, pass rush is gonna be a major strength. They got both Watt brothers, and I mean those are the main two guys on this defense. Um, Secondary is a major question mark, and that is because they have no safeties, as you can see right there, all caps. No safeties on this defense at all, so they were auto-assigned safeties. They'll be mid 50s. They do have a couple corners who I don't believe any of them are over a 70. So yeah, secondary is a major weakness. Now linebacker, they do have a couple guys in the 70s, so linebackers should be solid, be able to hold their own. But yeah, that's basically the rundown of Wisconsin. Let's get back to the bracket and see some of these other teams. Now we have the 12 seed. This team's going to be facing Georgia in the first round, and that's going to be Florida. Now this is a matchup I'm really excited for. It's a rivalry game in the first round, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Florida 74 overall, 76 offense, 73 defense. Um, Offense or strengths on offense, they have solid weapons. Um, a few high 70s receivers, low 80 running back. They're going to have, yeah, it's going to be Damian Pierce. I mean, at tight end, they're going to have Kyle Pitts. So yeah, some really solid weapons on offense. Offensive line is they have a couple solid pieces along the offensive line. I believe three or so high 70 or higher guys. I think one of them's like 85 with Trent Brown. But there are still going to be some holes along the offensive line. Now, quarterback is going to be Kyle Trask. I believe he's a 60 overall. We'll see how he plays. He has a few weapons around him, so yeah, like I said, we'll see how he plays. Defensively, no major holes on defense. They're still just coming in at 73, though. Um, they got all their bases covered, though. I don't know that they have a starter under a 70 overall. They do have some solid safeties. Um, Guys like May and Gardner Johnson. But yeah, really decent on defense. Nothing special. Um, Nothing really special on this team in general. just a really solid, well-rounded team. A lot of solid players. Looking back at the bracket for the 13 seed, who will be facing Oklahoma in the first round, that should be an interesting matchup. And that's going to be Florida State. Okay. Now, Florida State has a lot of holes, and we'll look at those here in a second. As you can see, 74 overall, 69 offense, 80 defense. Now, on offense, they're going to have Dalvin Cook at running back, and they're going to have Jameis Winston at quarterback. Not too shabby, but the receivers and tight ends are almost non-existent. They're going to be all in the 60s. Um, they might even have had some auto assigned. Offensive line is also pretty terrible. They have Hudson at center, who's going to be like 87. He's really the only guy they have on the offensive line. They got a couple of high 60s, but yeah, nothing really special. That's why they're coming in at 69 on offense. Now, defensively, they're going to have Sweat and Burns coming off the ends. That should be make for a really solid pass rush. Linebackers are a weakness. Now, I did try to compensate for that a little bit. I moved Derwin James down to middle linebacker. I figured they had enough depth in the secondary to allow for that. I think his overall stayed the same, actually. So he should be able to plug and play there in the middle, make some plays there. Now, in the secondary, they're going to have uh, best corner in the game, Jalen Ramsey, overall wise. And they're going to have a couple mid 70s safeties. So defensively, I mean, they still have other corners as well, like Xavier Rhodes. But yeah, defensively, the secondary is going to be a major strength. So is pass rush. They have Derwin James in the middle. Defensively, I mean, at 80 overall, one of the better defenses from one of these lower end teams in the tournament. Now let's go ahead and see who else we have with a 14 seed, and that is going to be none other than USC. USC coming in at a 74 overall, 76 offense, 72 defense. Now, in future years, this is a team that could also make some major jumps with Lincoln Riley over there now. So Caleb Williams could make the jump. Right now, they're going to have Sam Darnold starting at quarterback, but he should have some really good receivers to throw to. Um, mainly passing, many passing options in general, actually, because I moved a couple receivers to tight end. Their overalls didn't really change that much either, and that's going to be Micah Pittman and um, Drake London. Both moved to tight end. They were some of the heavier receivers, taller receivers. They fit that tight end mold. Blocking is going to be a bit of a question, but yeah, um, there are going to be some holes along the offensive line. We'll see how that plays out. Defensively, no major holes on defense, which is going to be a strength. They're going to have guys like Leonard Williams and Dory Jackson on the defense. So really solid defensively. 72 overall, though, so nothing really special defensively. And another weakness for this team is going to be at kicker, because they also do not have one of the games, so that's going to be like 3 or 4 teams that aren't going to have kickers. We'll see how that affects these teams. But yeah, on to the 15 seed in this tournament, which is going to be Texas A&M, and they are going to be facing Ohio State in the first round. Now, Texas A&M coming in at 74 overall, 76 offense, 72 defense. They're going to have Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Um, he's going to have some offensive weapons to throw to at receiver with guys like Mike Evans, Christian Kirk. He's going to have Reynolds to throw the ball to. Tight end is questionable. I believe they have like high 60s at tight end. Um, Offensive line's actually solid though. I don't think they have anybody below a 70 on the offensive line. Again, for these offensive lines, I am moving guys around. Like if they have two of the same position, I'll move them to a guard or the other side of the line. But yeah, nobody below a 70 on this offensive line. Now, defensively, they should have a really solid pass rush. If you don't know about these two already, or them going to Texas A&M, I'm about to tell you, Myles Garrett and Von Miller, both from Texas A&M, honestly, probably the best pass rushing duo in this tournament. Um, Now, also on defense, inside linebackers are going to be a question mark, and so is cornerbacks, and that's because they don't have any, which is really, yeah, they're going to have mid to high 50s at cornerback, I believe. So yeah, really questionable quarterback. They do have a couple decent safeties though, so hopefully, if they do get burnt, the safeties will be there to catch them. But yeah, this is going to be a really interesting matchup facing Ohio State, who has really good receivers. But I mean, we'll see how this pass rush can affect Ohio State in that first round matchup. Now, the last team making the tournament, you see we still have a bunch of teams down there and only one spot left. So if your team doesn't make the tournament, your favorite team doesn't make it, I'm sorry, but they just didn't have enough talent. I will go into some of those here in a second. But the 16th seed is going to be Mississippi State. Okay, and now some of these other teams that didn't make the cut, that almost made the cut, I actually made some of these teams just to see what their overalls would be. Um, and yeah, teams like Washington. Washington was right on the edge. They were right behind Mississippi State. Their offense just wasn't as high of an overall, which Mississippi State's wasn't that high either. But I believe they were one overall lower. A team like Oregon had like Justin Herbert, but they just didn't have enough bodies to field the team. They would have had too many filler people, bottom guys that I would have had to fill out the team with. Same with Ole Miss. Ole Miss would have had some offensive weapons from like Metcalf, Knox, and AJ Brown with Matt Corral at quarterback, which would have been solid, but they just didn't have enough guys on defense or the offensive line to fill out the team. And same with teams like Tennessee. Now, teams like Texas, actually, I think Tennessee might have been like this as well, but with Texas, they had enough bodies, but they just don't have any like stars on their team to make any noise in the tournament. They would have still came in at like a high 60 overall, which we'll see here in a second. Mississippi State's still a 73, I believe. And yeah, that's why some of these other teams didn't make the tournament. In the future, some of these teams might get more talent. Like Cincinnati was also a team that they got a few more bodies. They might have been able to make some noise. Guys like Travis Kelsey. But yeah, let's just go ahead and look at Mississippi State, who did make the tournament, and I think they deserved it. And you'll see right here, coming in at a 73 overall, 69 offense, 79 defense. Um, a strength of this team on offense is going to be their quarterback, Dak Prescott. Um, in terms of offensive weapons, not as much. Running back's a weakness. Receiving weapons is a weakness. They do have three, I believe, solid offensive linemen, um, but they do have still some holes along the offensive line. Now, defensively is where this team is a lot stronger. They will be playing Alabama in the first round. Now, this defensive line is going to be composed of Chris Jones, a D tackle, along with Fletcher Cox. And on the ends, they're going to have Sweat, and they will have Jeffrey Simmons. That's a really strong defensive line. Also on the defense, cornerbacks, they're going to have Darius Slay. Linebackers is a bit of a question mark. They got guys like Willie Gay and a couple others, um, but nothing super special at linebacker. Safeties are decent. They're going to have Jonathan Abram. But overall, the defense is really going to have to carry this team, and I think honestly, this is one of my favorite teams in the tournament in terms of like their top end talent. We'll see if it can carry. With guys like Dak Prescott, he's going to have to do a lot on offense for this team with the weapons that they lack. But yeah, let's take a look at the overall bracket here. So this is what we got. This is the bracket. These are the 16 teams that made it. If your team didn't make it, I'm sorry, but your team just didn't have enough talent this time around. Um, there were some teams that were close, and there are some teams that I'm looking at next year. One of them being a team like Tennessee. I think they might be able to make the jump next year, getting a quarterback with Hooker and a receiver with Hyatt. They might be able to make the tournament. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at some of these matchups. We got Alabama, Mississippi State. That should be an easy game for Alabama. Um, a lot of holes for Mississippi State. Michigan, Notre Dame. That should be a pretty even matchup. That'd be in the 8 and 9 matchup. 4 and 13. Honestly, this is the matchup that I'm looking at for an upset. Oklahoma, that defense is very questionable, and Florida State has a decent defense. So if they can get a few stops on defense, hold Oklahoma, I do think that Florida State can make some noise on offense with that Oklahoma defense being that bad. Guys like Dalvin Cook and Jameis Winston, they do have a lot of holes, but so does that Oklahoma defense. Then at the 12 and 5 matchup, we got a rivalry game. That should be a really fun one to watch. The 2 and 15 matchup, Ohio State, Texas A&M. They should be able to handle Texas A&M pretty easily. A&M does have some really good players on offense. We'll see how that plays out for them. Penn State, Clemson being the 10-7 matchup should be another really good game. LSU, USC is another game that'll be interesting to watch. LSU shouldn't have many problems with USC. USC's main strength is their receivers, and LSU's main strength is their secondary. LSU's pretty solid everywhere else. USC's pretty mid everywhere else. So that should be a pretty good matchup for LSU there. The 11 and 6 matchup being Wisconsin, Iowa. A couple really good offensive lines going against each other there. Yeah, not much else for those teams. I mean, Wisconsin has the pass rush. Iowa has the tight ends. But yeah, should be a really good Big Ten matchup right there. And yeah, that's basically the rundown of the tournament. I hope you guys are excited for it. That should be the next video that's going to be coming out. It should be one of these tournament games. Honestly, it'll probably be either Oklahoma, Florida State, or Florida, Georgia. And actually, just now thinking about it, Oklahoma's playing Florida State in a bowl game. I believe it's on literally right now. But yeah, those two games are probably the two games I'm most excited for. I mean, I'm excited for all of them, but those two are probably at the top of my list to watch and start commentating over. But yeah, that'll be in the next video. With that being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I hope you guys are excited for this. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Have a fantastic day, and adios.